Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Strategoi video. Ryan here, literally on camera for kind of the first time. We've had, Jonas and I have had some table talks, as we called them in the past, where we were more or less on camera, but kind of in the side. And, I don't know, you'll see from the nature of this video that I kind of want to just have a discussion, and I didn't really want to do the whole slides thing for this because I don't even know if it really makes sense in this context. But what I really want to do here, and maybe keep it short, which is hard for me sometimes, but is to discuss where I currently am at in the game of Age of Sigmar, and what's kind of like been holding me back from fully enjoying it lately. So we'll dive into that in a sec, but obviously in the meantime, this is my face. If you haven't seen it before, thanks for all the listening over the past few years to the channel. We really appreciate it. Go ahead and do all the like, share, and subscribe stuff if you're feeling so inclined, and I'll give you guys another reminder and the send out at the end. So the basic idea is I wanted to talk about my frustrations with 4th edition as it is right now, given that I am a person who has put, I think, significantly above average time into the game, not only in the sense of like having a channel, also being involved with Threshold Tactics, if you've happened to catch any of that stuff, being very active in the scene here in the Netherlands, someone who literally bought all the battle tomes in 3rd edition and analyzed all of them, does math for things, has too many armies. I think I have 12 or 13 armies, as in factions, and then quite large collections. A big pile of shame, but also over like 30,000 something odd points that are painted at my standard of painting. And I've played, I can't remember how many tournaments right now. I've got it somewhere written down, but I can tell you right now I've played 8 in 4th edition already, and that's only in like 8 months or so of 4th edition being out. Maybe like once a month ish a tournament, and that's a little slow for me. Usually it's a little bit more, I think. But anyway, the point is, as someone who puts a lot of time and thought into it, and it's one thing to complain about a game if, I don't know, you don't interact with it a lot, because then, not that your opinion on that isn't valid, but the idea is more maybe that you haven't given it a fair enough chance, or this, that, or the other. I think in 3rd edition, I played something like 379-ish games, averaging about 10 to 12 a month. And then thus far in 4th edition, I've played 85 games at 8 different tournaments with a number of different armies, just to give you a little bit of a background. Even though I've played most of my armies at tournaments at this point in some edition, at this point in 4th edition, I've played Idoneth and Skaven each once at tournaments, OBR 3 times, Slaves 3 times, and then not at tournaments, I've also played some Stormcast and some Tzeentch. There might be something else in there that I'm forgetting. But I also have played a good bit of KO in 3rd edition. Actually, the most I've ever played of any army was KO, but I haven't been interested enough in it in 4th edition, which is maybe a point I could make here. Cities was a big army for me. Tzeentch was a big army for me for tournaments. I've also played Lumineth and Sylvaneth and Gitz at tournaments before. Am I missing anything? I think that's kind of most of it. So anyway, very passionate about the game. And so, as you could probably see from what most likely is the title of this video, that I've kind of lost my way with 4th edition. I'll never stop really being interested in the rules and stuff, but there are a number of things that changed with 4th edition that have left me kind of like feeling a little rudderless, as basically my buddy Hugo kind of said at a recent tournament when we were on our way over there. And he's one of the best players I know, if not the best player I know, at least with his armies for sure. And that we could be on kind of different ends of the spectrum. I have, as kind of a joke, I've said for a while that I'm either the best worst player I know, or worst best player, as in it's kind of funny to say it like that, and it's not even 100% grammatically correct, but like to say, um, I think it's kind of says something about the amount of time for the amount of time I've put in the game. You'd think I'd be way better, and or the other way around, that I'm actually secretly a really bad player, but because of all the time I put in, I got way better. Um, and so, like I've had plenty of tournaments where I've done mediocrely, let's say. Um, that said, I do try to surround myself with people that are playing, at a pretty high level. And if I do go into a game with someone who's more casual about it, a lot more casual about it, I tend to look like I'm a good player. But I don't know. It's one of those things. So that's just to kind of give you some level setting, I guess, on where I'm coming from. Obviously, I care a lot about the content because we've got a whole channel, and I really like keeping up with what GW's new sets are and all that stuff. So, what is it about fourth edition? Well, first off, I've always loved it when new rules come out. So when the indexes came out and the new actual fundamental rules for fourth edition came out, I was pretty psyched. Like I like the colorful presentation, especially of the index cards. I feel like they've lost something in the way they're presented in the Battletome versions of War Scrolls. Um, but I really liked a lot of what they had going with the way that they created the indexes and how the indexes look. So let's start there. I think that's a positive. I think they do actually have one of the cleanest rule sets that we've ever seen from GW games, or at least Age of Sigmar. I've been following since second edition. I think Matt Rose and the team that's behind the design is doing a fantastic job of keeping it updated, and these incremental updates that are really paying attention to actual recorded games. Of course, they can't keep up with casual games, but the tournament games. Um, and then trying to adjust things based on things that are broken or aren't, working well. The updates are coming faster, and that's great. And I do have faith that they're eventually going to land on something I really like. However, right now it's just not clicking in. Um, is there anything else particularly about fourth edition that I think GW's. I'm glad that GW seems to be getting away from just adding like a FOMO box hero every time a new battle tone comes out. It does seem like armies are getting increasingly more range refreshes and new models, even if that means things are going away, or even if that means for whatever weird reason, a lot of the new models that are coming out are getting bad rules with them, like the new Git Mob stuff, largely, or a lot of the new Stormcast stuff. I think the new Skaven stuff was decent, especially like, mm, I guess the weapon teams stuff. I like the Doom Flayers a lot. I think Vizik is pretty cool if you get his points right. There's some good Skaven stuff, I think, but in the battle tomes we've seen, um, it seems like that's one of the things that keeps happening. I don't. The only one I'm not really keeping up super well with is Oryx because I don't really play either of those factions. But from what I've heard, they kind of got the shaft a bit. Um, so anyway, um, things. I think at the core of this, my reasoning for making this video is to say I am frustrated right now with the game. And the reason I'm frustrated with the game is not because I keep losing, although that certainly feeds into it. I've had a few zero or close zero performances at tournaments recently. One was a 0-3 at a one-dayer, which blew my mind because at a much more competitive tournament with a very similar list, like 2 months before that, I um, placed fifth place out of like 18, 20 people in a quite competitive environment. It was the highest I'd ever placed at that competitive of a tournament of this series that we have, the threshold tournaments that we kind of have. We've got a little side kind of thing going on. It was meant for like a world's teams training ground kind of thing. Anyway, and then I went 0-3 with that list, and then recently this past weekend it looked like I was going to do 0-5 with a somewhat brutal slaves list. But to be fair, we had a really tough meta. It was another one of those events, a really competitive environment. Tom Mejas, who runs our tournaments and of course one of the leaders of Threshold, um, along with Nick and Kai. He he said he saw the list and saw this is a snake pit is what he described it as. But yeah, I took like a half fun, half brutal Bellicor and Varigard list and ended up almost going 0-5. I finally won my last game, and that could have gone either way, honestly, I think. So it's not just the losing. It's there seems to be something that feels like this kind of insurmountable wall, and that I personally can't seem to learn what I need to do to make the game not only the kind of game where I'm having closer games or I'm winning more often, but also where I'm actually enjoying it. And I don't know what it is about fourth edition exactly. Um, Maybe it's the meta. Maybe it's I've heard theories about all the armies basically have the same kind of stuff, or the good ones do, and then you're just kind of going up against that. There's conversations about playing a kind of singleton format like Highlander, where you're only taking one of each type of unit, or conversations about not reinforcing units, or limited amounts of reinforcing units. All kinds of stuff. The people are talking about balancing the game, but the fact that I've heard multiple competitive people, even just this past weekend at one of our little tournaments. It's not little in terms of competitiveness, but it's a focused group, complaining about where the state of fourth edition is, and um, yeah, I don't know. It's tough for me because I don't know if you know the spectrum, and maybe I should do a video about this at some point. But Mark Rosewater from Magic the Gathering, one of the lead designers from Magic, has had a famous description of the different psychographic profiles for gaming for quite a while. Those would be Johnny, Timmy, and Spike. Spike is kind of the wins at all costs, like so, not being a dick or something, but like um, where you're happy to play a meta list and learn the meta list and get good at a meta list, or whatever needs to be done to be the most efficient and win because you chose the right things. You also learned how to be a good strategist and so forth, but you are not making compromises when it comes to what you're bringing, and how you're approaching the game. On kind of the other side of the spectrum, it's actually more of a triangle, but on the other side of the spectrum, you might put Timmy, which is someone who is psyched about just having fun things go off and seeing cool interactions, and it doesn't necessarily matter if they win. Of course, everyone wants to win, but um, they would probably not enjoy winning as much playing a list that doesn't get to do Timmy things that are big and exciting or bold, or um, having to play someone else's list when all they really want to do is like monster mash it up or something like that. Of course, they still want to win. And then you've got maybe arguably somewhere in between is a Johnny, and I definitely consider myself a Johnny, is someone who gets their pleasure from the game, of course, also winning, but in a combo going off or something creative which you've expressed in your, say, list building. In Magic, it could be how you made your deck, but usually on, like, say, combo decks or alternate win condition decks. That would be a good Magic example. In Warhammer, of course, we don't necessarily have alternate win conditions, um, really, but the kind of equivalent would be list building and trying to have a list that maybe everything, all the pieces don't necessarily fall into place every time, but they go off enough that it gives you that sense of fulfillment that you're looking for in your role or your kind of disposition as a Johnny. So I think fourth edition has gone way more in the direction of either Spike or Timmy. They're like, so a pure Timmy thing would be, now we can make lists with unlimited auxiliary units. You could just go ham on literally just heroes. You could have an unlimited number of heroes, and it's giving your opponent a free CP every battle round. It's a weird decision, and almost no one does it like that. But then you have lists like you can do the whoops all magmas in Fire Slayers, or Bloodthirsters list that they've recently implemented via the low drops kind of count stuff that you can do with bringing one of those types of units in with your units, your heroes, so that you can kind of maximize those units. That's a new thing that they've kind of got going, but even in you can do that now without having to hit the aux units, and that's kind of cool and flavorful. I don't know if it's actually good. If I want to run a list with one hero and the rest is just Warp Lightning Cannons, there's nothing stopping me from doing that. But in 3rd edition, that wasn't possible. So in a certain sense, the Timmy stuff is really amped up. And then like the fact that say you don't want to go spam, there's a lot more units that have a keyword on them that's an ability that can only be used once per turn army. And that might be great for someone who really likes the kind of commander singleton type format where there's one of each unit and you're just having all these crazy units on the table. You throw your whole collection in and just a mishmash. And that's also kind of a Timmy thing in a certain sense. I just want to use all my cool models. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think the game is actually, in a weird way, more rigged, not rigged in a bad way, but more geared towards Timmys. On the other side of the spectrum, because of the simplicity of the game, maybe because of the way the systems work, the spikiness, the efficiency, and maximizing what the obvious best choice is for every army. And I think the points are ultimately a little more expensive. I don't know if that's 100% true, but my feeling is that you're bringing a whole lot less units and a lot less variety when you make a list these days, at least a competitive list. And so it's very built on knowing the meta, knowing what you need to counter. And I'd say in a certain sense, it's even less rock, paper, scissors. It's more like just there's a type of army that wins and a type of army that doesn't. And that to me feels very spiky in the sense that you get rewarded for putting in the time to know what's out there and not just rock, paper, scissors your way through it, but actually just do the most efficient and be the best at it. It's one of the reasons Slaves feels kind of broken right now. But then I can throw in half of my army's got Therodons and a Myrmidon and like maybe something else flavorful. And then there were 2 lists like that at this past tournament, my buddy Dawa and myself. Dawa was the guy who was on our Slaves review when we did that a few months ago when the index was out. Actually, it was before the Battle Tome. And we both took similar kind of Therodons lists, and we both ended up, I think, in the bottom 4 or so. I was number 2nd from last, and I think he might have been 4th or 5th from last, because we just got our asses handed to us, and especially in that meta. I think if you had a bigger pool of people, we probably would have gone. There was definitely a world where we went 3-2, but when you had too many, like you were only playing against people with competitive lists, that wasn't going to happen, I guess. But then Peter, our colleague in the community who was training with the Dutch Worlds team, playing 20 chosen, so double chosen, and a whole bunch of like Chaos Warriors and just a lot of bodies that can do a lot of damage. He ended up placing 2nd, and I think he had a really good chance of placing 1st. So it's not that Slaves couldn't do it. As soon as you pulled, even though did Dawa have Vanguard? Yeah, he had 6 Vanguard as well. Even though we both had the Vanguard and Bellicor and whatever, as soon as you kind of flip some stuff around, all of a sudden the list is like, good. And not to say that, like, I think Peter knows how to play that list better than Dawa and I do currently because he was really training for it. And then, of course, player skill also comes into play. But I mean, I do think there's reasons why, especially even casual tournaments, if there are, like I've been to one not too long ago where Slaves ended up placing with relatively casual players, nothing against those players at all, but they're not like quite there on the training for Worlds kind of level, and they might have been newer to the game. Placed in the top like 4 or 5 places out of 20-ish people, or maybe even both of them podiumed, playing a Slaves list because a lot of people can't answer that, especially in a casual type setting. And I guess that's kind of what I'm saying is like on some level, the list itself ends up pulling a lot of the weight. Again, not trying to take away from the skill level of anyone, but like if I had to say whether skill level or list right now is a bigger determining factor given enough enough variance of the player base, I would say the list is having a bigger impact than the player. At the very highest ranks, I think it's the player. No question. Like there are some amazing players in the world that can take some list that on paper looks horrible and the average person would screw up and not do well with it all and totally just crush. But anyway, my long-winded way of this is my long-winded way of getting to I think the Johnny part, which is the reason I always like the game, is gone. List writing, we all have complained about the regiment system in some fashion. I don't implicitly hate it. I feel like I would like to take more in my army, so I don't feel like I have to choose the most efficient things. I could maybe more room to try some things out. Um, I miss a real allies system, especially a real coalition system for things like cities. Like for me, cities is basically dead because what attracted me to it was that you could basically take any and every order army, with a couple exceptions, Seraphon and Fyreslayers, ultimately. And then there were other armies that could do that. And, Tzeentch was one of my faves for similar reasons. You could take slaves, you could take beasts. Um, and then, of course, the allies. Those two that I first mentioned were just coalitions. So you could do those plus allies. And you could really mix and match. And maybe it wasn't optimal, but you had a lot of flexibility that you're not getting with the Regiments of Renown right now. Something else I miss is this the battle tome cycle that we're in right now. The battle tome cycle is, if we're being honest with ourselves, what it really equates to is you waited a little bit longer to get your battle tome than like let's say you're a slaves player. Then everyone got their indexes, right? This is one way of looking at it. Everyone got their indexes. Like, let's say the armies that are going to get battle tomes in the back half of 4th edition, they got their indexes. So they got kind of like an early Christmas or whatever because they reset the whole system. But you basically implicitly just waited for your battle tome, which was coming out in 4 months after release or 6 months after the release of the edition. But they also gave you a sneak peek to most of what it's going to look like, and that was the index. So, but on our brains, we're thinking, well, everyone got indexes, so that's a freebie. And then when I get my battle tome, it should feel like it's getting updated and really like an overhaul and creative stuff and whatever. And a lot of people are disappointed with how simple and kind of like basic in terms of choices the indexes and battle tomes are. I mean, like, why we can't have sub factions that feel like fleshed out whole things. I would like I don't I've dipped a toe into understanding how 40k works, and that system seems so much more fun to me, where they have their whole set of commands, the stratagems, and other things that come along with the faction. The fact that our sub factions are basically meaningless, the battle formations. Um, that you only have 3 artifact choices and 3 hero traits, and you can only take one. There's no flexibility that you can get more. Mount traits are gone. The only thing that's even close to that now is the slaves banner, which is cool, but still pretty limited. Spell lores are real simplified. Just all kinds of stuff that feels like a lot of the choice has been pulled out of even just the army, not even touching on coalition or allies. The regiment system in theory is more flexible, but at the same time, they keep tweaking it because they recognize it's got lots of flaws, like adding more of what I call italics heroes. Um, I don't know. The simplified rule sets for each model, a lot of things like not making sense to bring multiples of them, what I already mentioned. There's a lot of weird things going on, and I don't know that any one of those things is what's actually making me enjoy it less. I think part of it is that I'm just not getting to express myself as a Johnny. And if any of you out there are Johnnies, feel free to let me know if you feel that might be actually what's going on with you as well. It could be that there's Johnnies out there that just think this system is amazing and they're getting everything they want out of it. So I don't know. I don't know if I have much else to say about it on the surface of things. Like, I have hope for the future. I'm still kind of waiting for the battle tomes to figure themselves out, like where they evolve and become their own thing instead of just kind of like our indexes were like early peeks into what our battle tomes are going to look like with subtle changes and some new great models. Every model they keep bringing out is great, except for maybe that like Hobgrot Slitter boss or whatever. He's not that great looking. But I don't know. There's a reason why I've been slowly. It's funny, like I'll get back to that part in a sec. I got into Old World right when Old World came out because like I was kind of like ready to kind of just coast out of 3rd edition. And unfortunately, fourth edition came out, all the rules came out, we were doing all the faction focuses, whatever, and I was really psyched about what it could be. And then it just ate up all the oxygen in the room, and all I could think about was fourth edition. I just wanted to focus on that. Of course, I've got this huge investment in models that I haven't used for some armies, a big pile of shame and whatever, and was looking forward to that opportunity. And so Old World got put on the shelf. I got a Tomb King's army for what it's worth. But then once fourth edition's sheen kind of wore off, I found myself wanting to get into 40k, partly because a lot of the Tzeentch stuff I had, or at least proxies I was using from 40k, like Magnus I was using as one of my uh, Lords of Change for my Guild of Summoners army, but that doesn't really make it, I don't need 4 chickens anymore, so I decided, well, I'll just put the actual Magnus head on it and use him in 40k, and I have a Thousand Suns army with demons, and now the demons are getting folded into Thousand Suns, so it's even better for me. I've got a Mutalisk Vortex Beast sitting around. I even used an Aramon I put him on disc I guess he could be on disc anyway, but to be a Fate Master, because the Fate Master's model was hard to find and not great. And now I've got Aramon, so it's like, I was like, well, how about I just jump over to 40k? I started investing into it in time and learning the rules and stuff, and then it just was too much. It was too much to handle. But then Nick suggested that we kind of casually around the time Christmas, that the two of us plus 2 of our more casual buddies, that we get into Kill Team, and we played a couple games of that, and that was just really refreshing, really, really something else. And there's a reason that I've been kind of distracted by these other games, because fourth edition's just not scratching that itch for me. But I feel like I should keep playing it. I will. It's not like I'm going to stop, but I think I've learned I need to reset kind of my priorities in what I'm getting out of the game. Like, I've decided I'm going to probably stop going to super competitive tournaments of any sort, not just our own. Start taking more fluffy lists. Like, as a point of kind of comparison, at the end of third edition, literally the last 4 tournaments I went to, I played a Warp Lightning Cannons list, and did pretty well at all 4 of them. And it was a weird, wacky list that no one was playing. I got to express, some list building creativity. I was going 3-2 at these tournaments. I was feeling good about it, including at World Singles, by the way, which includes a lot of really seriously competitive people that are going to be playing at Worlds as soon as it wraps up. The singles part wraps up. And by Worlds, I mean Worlds teams, and then the singles that precedes, not the World Championship in Atlanta. And that was literally the last thing I did before I headed into we headed into 4th edition, was playing Skaven Warp Lightning Cannons with Screech, and it was amazing. I was having a blast. And then all of a sudden, the whole paradigm shifts, and then I not only can't seem to win, just period, even with some lists that I consider somewhat filthier than I'd like to play, but then I'm also not getting to express myself anymore, and I'm not having that much fun playing the game. Like this past weekend, I literally played against 5 people that I had some of the best games we've ever played together. But yet, in terms of like our personal connection and interaction, but I didn't actually really enjoy the game itself. Again, I'm not leaving 4th edition, I'm not leaving AOS, but I'm trying to find a different way to find the joy in playing it, So maybe that's a good place to like close things off on here. Maybe I'm calling this a Real Talk Ryan conversation. That's something I kind of alluded to a while ago, that back in my rock band, the band used to call me, because I kind of had a hard time filtering how I'm really feeling. But I'm not trying to crap on what GW is doing. That's not the point. I get that they wanted to start over. Matt Rose, I really do have faith in, and I think ultimately they're going to sort this out, but they've chosen the long road to doing so. And it does kind of it's a little bit of a feel bad that the battle tomes are just replacements for the indexes, and they're not really doing a whole lot, but I think that'll eventually change. I wish the rules weren't behind a paywall after the indexes. That's also a feel bad, but it is what it is. It'd be nice if they could change that up, but that's not the main reason I'm not liking 4th edition. Again, I think the rule set's really clean. I like the color codedness of especially the indexes. And And I think they have actually done really nice battle tomes in terms of the new formatting of the story, the lore, the art, and stuff. But I am a little underwhelmed by the amount of changes. So anyway, what are you guys thinking? How are you feeling? Do you see yourself as like a Spike, a Johnny, a Timmy? Do you agree with me that this edition tends to kind of lean either super Timmy or super Spike, and then kind of leaves the Johnnies in the dust a bit? Or what's your take? I would prefer that we keep it positive down below. And if you disagree with me, that's totally cool. This is just kind of like me ranting, I guess, and not necessarily a negative way, just kind of like a lamenting where I'm currently at right now and how I get back to really loving what I liked even about the end of third edition, which to me, the beginning of third edition was actually my favorite. But anyway, um, so as I mentioned, just a reminder: hit the like, share, and subscribe. I'll try to get that OBR video out soon. I just have kind of been real busy with work, and then also, going through this whole thought process, which is kind of put a damper on things a little bit. But anyway, really appreciate you guys. We'll try to get Jonas on here sooner than later. I know he's also been quite kind of distracted in other directions for basically the majority of the edition. So he's not over where I am. I don't think. I think he's just kind of taking a break from the gaming part of his the stuff he's got going on right now. He's keeping pretty busy with some other stuff. So I'll keep holding the fort down until he gets that spark back in his own way. But until next time, guys, Ryan out.